Okay. All right, we're all set to go. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Hannah Crapeau, and I'm a member of the Certiport marketing team. We're so happy to have everyone joining us for our fourth, Certified Academy webinar of 2026. So I've opened up the chat. Please tell us where you're joining us from, what courses you teach, what you're hoping to learn from today's session so we can all get to know each other a little bit better. We are in a live presentation, of course, so all of our attendees are currently muted. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those into the chat and we'll make sure to discuss those with our panelists as they come up. But before we dive into our discussion today, I just wanted to take a second to highlight our sponsor for today's webinar, the Autodesk Certified User Certification Program. The new Autodesk Tinkercad 3D Design Certification is now available and is an excellent entry point for students who want to explore 3D design skills and build toward the Autodesk Certified User Certification. And at the end of our panel discussion today, we have Kenneth Masteller who will be giving some more information about this program, so stick around for that at the end today. Today, we're talking about closing the gap between education and the workforce, and we're so thrilled to have some amazing panelists here with us. Matt Dombrowski, Kimberly Forbes, and Cynthia, or Cindy Cribbs. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so everyone can see their lovely faces. All right, so let's go ahead and get started, and we'll do some quick introductions. So first, we'll come to you, Matt. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in education.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Matt Dombrowski, and I'm a professor at the School of Visual Arts and Design at the University of Central Florida. I've been teaching just over 20 years now, and I love bringing visual storytelling, creativity, and different creative tools to the classroom, inside and outside the classroom. I also am a creative director at a university-run nonprofit called Limitless Solutions, where we use these different creative tools to create 3D printed bionic arms for children with limb differences, and we give those away free of charge. So for me, having my students certified, ensuring that all of our classes kind of have that benchmark to kind of lead them to their professional dreams is so important in everything we do inside and outside the classroom. So thanks for having me.
Amazing. Awesome. Thanks, Matt, for being here. Appreciate you. Cindy, we'll come to you next because I have you next on my screen.
Okay. I'm Cindy Krebs. I teach at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. I am the program director of business technologies and education in the information systems department. Our department covers everything from technical, like networking, to the methods of teaching classes for education. I've taught at both secondary and post-secondary levels. I love teaching, so I'm going to probably die in my chair of old age. So I've been teaching 38 years now.
38 years young.
Thank
Totally.
you.
So glad that you're here, Cindy. Thank you so much for being here with us. All right, Kim, we're going to come to you to round us out.
Okay, good morning. I'm Kim Forbes, and I am the Director of Career and Technical Education for Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I have been in this role for 4 years. I've had various experiences working for the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction before here, but I started education as a second career, started teaching middle school engineering classes back in the that year. And I'm over 20 years in education, and currently I oversee over 40 different career pathways in CTE for the school system. We teach 6th through 12th grade CTE courses, and I'm happy to be here.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so we know that we're here today to talk about the gap between classroom and career, what that looks like, how we can bridge that gap. And I know that recent research shows that a lot of students have a very difficult time finding a job after they graduate, either from K-12 or higher education. And there are a lot of perceived obstacles that make it difficult for students to find jobs. So Kim, I wanted to come to you first to talk about what are some of those perceived obstacles that students are facing?
As far as going into the workforce,
Correct, yes.
preparation, I think that sometimes are the students ready to go into the workforce even in high school? So working towards giving them some of the skills they need, anywhere from the durability skills to actually the experiential learning in the classroom with those skills. Um, CTE used to be the class in the back of the school for, the other students, and now it's really preparing for college and career. So I think there's a misconception. Can they go into the workforce while they're actually still in high school? And can they manage that with their learning? So that for me, that's a major one. I know there's some other things. I don't want to, take up a whole lot of
Give a
time.
no,
But
and I'm so glad for your insight because you're
yeah,
coming from that K-12 level, and we'll have Cindy
yeah,
and Matt here talk about the disconnect in
yeah.
higher ed. So Cindy,
Yeah.
we'll come to you next. What are some of those perceived obstacles that your students are coming across in getting jobs after graduation?
A lot of our students are coming back to us and saying that the job application requires experience. And they say, how do we get experience without experience? And so there's a lot of ways to do that we teach them. And things like internships, networking opportunities with employers. But I think the big thing we hear is they need that practical experience while they're getting their education to enable them to combine education and experience for that first job opportunity.
It's funny that entry level jobs now require experience where historically obviously that hasn't been the case. So those internships, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, I appreciate you calling that out, Cindy. Matt, I've seen you nodding along too. Tell us a little bit about the obstacles that your students are facing in Florida.
Yeah. So, I think we have immensely talented students. I think I can even speak for my colleagues here in the room. Like all of our students are so bright, so creative, so capable of getting jobs. I think personally there is a bit of a disconnect between the strategy right now from our young students, and a little bit of that comes a little bit of the critical thinking and maybe self-awareness. And I think, what I tell my students at least is, and I teach animation and graphic design. A lot of my kids come in and go, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to get a job right at Pixar. And we really talk about the reality of that, right? The destination is always the same, but sometimes essentially we have traffic and sometimes we don't. And so for a lot of our students, what they're encountering is that traffic, and they're encountering those obstacles that are going to kind of hold them back a little bit when it comes to achieving that dream. And the dream is achievable. But the reality of that dream is you don't start maybe at that huge company. You start at, I always put them in tiers, a tier two or a tier three company. You look at your current experience and say, well, Pixar may want a little more experience than this tier three company that's fantastic and it has great benefits and pay, but the students are avoiding doing the research on those. So for my students, to prepare them for that workforce, I encourage them to have that strategic approach and to understand it is not because you don't have skill. It is not because you do not have the ability down the road to do something like that. But right now, you have to really think about, is this the next step in that journey? Is this the first pit stop or is it the final destination? And getting their mindset to shift like that helps them conduct better research, helps them dive a little bit deeper into jobs that they can compete for right out of school and that aren't saturated by, this was the one job posted on LinkedIn. Let's every graduate apply to the same job. Those are going to be harder chances to get in. So for me, it's a lot about that self-awareness and strategy.
I like that strategic preparation. We've talked about some of the skill building and the context between the skills that they're building in the classroom and the opportunities that are available to them. So I wanted to bring it back to what is the common thread between all three of the responses is the skills, right? To be able to translate what I can do now into the workforce. So I wanted to talk about, and we'll come to you first, Matt. What are some of those key skills that you're focusing on with your students to make sure that they're workforce ready?
Um, just to reiterate with that too, right? Like, so preparation and going back really quickly, I don't know if there's ever been a time it's been easy to get jobs. I think that's something that for me at least, that's a common thing from when I graduated school to I'm sure everyone in this room. It was never like, hey, let's get a job. Like we'll just go down there and get one. But for my students, it is the ability to kind of process what the companies need, what they are asking for, and figure out that, yes, a resume and a job application is about them, but it also has to have that through line, and those dots need to be connected to what they really need. And if there's no awareness of what the company is actually asking for, that's where the resume doesn't connect to the job ad. There's not shared language between the two. They're not using those critical thinking skills to and that strategy to kind of make their job hunt a little bit more successful. And so those are big things. It comes down to communication. It comes down to the different ways they communicate. Can they speak about what they do in framework to a industry, right? Can they write about what they do and connect the dots? It's again less about the quality of actual work they do, whether it's Autodesk or Maya or Adobe Creative Cloud. They're really good at that stuff. It's the other job preparation skills where I see kind of the disconnect right now.
I like that because it makes that if we can bridge that gap, those soft skills, right,
Mhm.
then they already have the hard skills from all of the things that they've learned as they've been going through school. So it's just an additional kind of building component to get them to that next level.
And they list soft skills.
Uh-huh.
Those are the first things on their resume. I've had students say I'm good at attention to detail, and they spelled attention wrong. And
Have to
that's
have a
not,
little bit more self-awareness to be able to
yeah.
go through that, right?
And
Yeah,
that's
no.
that's the trick. Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate that. Cindy, any thoughts from you on the key skills that you're focusing on? You're in a slightly different industry or kind of job career cluster. What skills are you focusing on with your students to make sure they're ready for the workforce?
One of the things I focus on is their ability to analyze data, to think critically about the data, because they produce all of these results, and sometimes they're off the wall. And the student, if they don't look at it and go, "That's incorrect," they aren't successful. So I always use case studies and have them evaluate. And then we focus on collaboration too, because if you can get a group of students together to analyze these case studies, they're developing their communication skills and their teamwork. Um, in my area, we use a lot of Windows software, and we always have students with Macs, and they can tend to get frustrated. So, beginning of the semester, we always create a Mac Users Unite team, and they're encouraged to work together. I don't consider that cheating. I consider that collaboration. When you're on the job, if you have an issue, you need to learn that it's acceptable to go to a coworker and discuss it, solve the problem together. So I would say we focus most on analytical thinking, collaboration, teamwork, and communication.
I like that. And I like that you've tied it into some real examples for what you're doing in the classroom. That's excellent, Cindy. Thank you so much. Kim, any thoughts from you on the workforce readiness skills that you're practicing in North Carolina?
Absolutely. So we've shifted in career and technical education, actually in elementary school, starting with that awareness piece of it. Middle school, we're doing the exploring, but that high school is the preparation piece because we are wanting them to get the work-based learning opportunities, be they job shadowing, which we start in middle school to the internships and our pre-apprenticeship so that they could possibly go into an apprenticeship post-secondary. What we're doing is actually, if they're in an internship, we have partnered with our chamber to do a 10-hour course for them to actually understand what skills they need. But we're practicing the very things that Cynthia's talking about in the classroom, the team building, the collaboration, the communication. We're trying to start it earlier so that when they do go into the workforce, they're prepared. There's some basic skills that they need to understand the simple being on time, right? How do we practice that? Or our not pulling your cell phone out in the middle of the day type of thing. So those are some of those skills that we're really honing in on in the high school so that when they go post-secondary, they have that preparation already.
I like that, Kim. And I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into what you were saying with some of
Mhm.
these work-based learning opportunities.
Mhm.
How are you ensuring that students are practicing those skills that you're teaching in the classroom in those type of workforce settings? What does that transition look like?
So when they're in the workforce, of course, we have at each of our high schools a career development coordinator that actually monitors the students. They actually go out to the workplace. They communicate with the employers as a part of the follow-up while they're there. So if there's some things that the employer shares with us, then that's when we're working with the students because they're still in that learning phase. They don't know all of it. So that's a part of that learning process for them. So we have some some monitoring that we do when they are in that job, be it a job shadow or internship or pre-apprenticeship that we constantly do, and we get feedback from the employers as
I love
well.
that because
Yeah.
it's a soft place to land, right? It's
Mhm.
not a paid situation. It's not that they have to worry about delivering actual results. It's just a learning opportunity and a place for them to be
Absolutely.
able to practice. And I'm
Absolutely.
curious, thinking about Matt and Cindy, your environments are slightly different because we have students that are a little bit older. What do those work-based learning opportunities look like for you? Matt, we'll come to you first and then Cindy.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, we have a lot of opportunities in higher ed, whether it's, as I mentioned, like the Learning Lab that I run, or the nonprofit that I run over here at UCF. So, that's a great opportunity for students to come in and kind of have a safety net of real world experience, still collaborate with industry partners, still collaborate and create things that affect real people. There's tons of those around a university campus. And the good part about that is that does work within their academic schedule. So talking about time, Kim, that's that we all have 24 hours, but sometimes it doesn't seem that way. So for a lot of our students, that's the biggest hurdle. And a little bit controversial too, and I know we're talking about internships. Not every student will benefit from an internship or will benefit from that real world experience. I often say to some of my students, hey, you're not there yet in the sense of like balancing that time, but what could you use the 12 to 15 hours that you would have an internship for to get there? And so it's about that reframing and it's about that context. And then as well, connecting our alumni back in the university to our student body, having guest speakers come in and explain their day to day is super important because we can say something 1,000 times, but when you have that guest speaker come in and say the same thing, it lands 100% of the time. Why didn't you tell us that? They tell me. I'm like, I have been. So this is really important for our students to hear it from different voices, from voices that may look like them as well, right? And have similar backgrounds to them. That is also immensely important. And I think that is, how you break down those silos of we're just in an academic building versus this is a community, right? The chamber, like you mentioned, is coming in and this is a community discussion, not an individual silo of only in the walls of my classroom. So we need to kind of break those silos down.
And I appreciate it. It feels a lot like parenting in the way that I've been telling you this whole time, but it means something when it's echoed by someone else. And
Mhm.
so being able to bring in those additional voices, I think, speaks volumes, for lack of a better term, about the importance of what you're teaching in the classroom. So it really rounds out the experience for them. And I appreciate that, Matt. Cindy, any additional thoughts from you on getting your students to practice these skills in a non kind of academic setting?
Well, one of the things we do is have them observe the skills. We start with job shadowing. And so long before they get to the point where they can intern, they go in and observe that these things are important. And we have a set of discussion questions that they journal as they observe them, but that makes them aware of them. And then we do have the internships, and we also have service learning so that students can go on a workplace and practice these skills in a work environment, whether it's a paid environment or a service learning and they're working for a community project. But they begin to see that, like you say, the mom telling them, well, they begin to see that it's not just the teachers giving them this theoretical knowledge, it's actual practice. And so we find those experiences very helpful.
And I appreciate that it works for a lot of students and it may not work for some. I think, Matt, you called that out specifically that these work-based learning opportunities are a great experience great way to build up the resume, but for some students, they may not be prepared for those.
Mm.
So sometimes it's going back to building those skills in the classroom. And one that I wanted to talk about in particular, which I feel like is the elephant in the room that I'm sure educators may or may not be sick of hearing about, is the demand from industry for students to have AI skills, right? Going immediately into the workforce. So many companies are looking for that. So how are you preparing students for this type of automated workforce while still building on these human strengths that we've been talking about, the communication, the collaboration, all of those types of things? So Cindy, will come to you first and talk about AI skills and what that looks like at UVU.
Okay, one of the things I like to do is help students recognize that the capability of taking new and novel things from existing material is not new. Aristotle wrestled with this idea 2,400 years ago. What we need to teach them is that humans are generative beings, and we can use generative AI to enhance our skills, not use just AI. So we give them access to the tools. We encourage them to use it, but we teach them how to evaluate the results, use that analytical thinking and critical thinking skill to check the results and see if that's really what they were asking for. And more importantly, is it really a solution to what they were asking for? And that without them being in the loop, if they just capture this and paste, um, it can be catastrophic. They have to evaluate those skills. And we actually have 3 degrees in my department. We have a certificate where they just basically learn to use the tools ethically and appropriately and efficiently. But then we go on to a bachelor's and a master's where they actually are programming AI. But we in our program we require every student take a class in AI and communications so that we can point out all of these skills. But we make it a part of every single class. We don't call it a cheating tool. This is not a cheating tool. It is a simple tool like any software package if we use it appropriately. And so that's what we struggle to teach our students at all times.
Oh, I love that. I think that that's great. And Matt, I know because we've had separate conversations about this,
Yeah.
that you have very similar opinions about AI, but tell me about how you're working with it at UCF, what that looks like.
A lot of overlaps, Cynthia. Same kind of, ethical use mindset. Process over product is very important as well. All of those things. Now, I'm in a unique situation because I'm in a visual arts program that there's a lot of polarizing views from students and faculty across the whole College of Arts and Humanities, and even in general in engineering versus the fine arts. And one of the kind of common things I'm seeing is the kind of going back to the literacy side of things. We don't necessarily have an AI problem. We have a digital literacy, critical literacy problem. And Cynthia, like you said, just these issues have been happening for centuries, and new technology appears, or I even tell my students about Richard Prince, who would take photos of advertisements and then sell them in giant galleries, and there's some copyright things. And not all AI is made the same. Not all AI is the same. AI inherently is feeding off of a library made by us humans. And so, if the AI is bad, what's that say about us? And so I think there's a deeper conversation that our students need to start with. And the first thing I like to do is kind of just set the groundwork. I have a class called Art of AI in which it's not art. It's not about visual art. It's about the art or the strategy and the art of war, so to speak. And it's about setting a baseline. And we don't touch an AI tool until maybe week 10. And they go into this course, and there's Reddit boards that, oh, this course is going to be, he's stealing our jobs and he's going to teach us how to cheat. And then they take the course and go, oh. And the whole course is because of those things online, this reactive nature we have as humans, which is natural. It's okay, that doesn't go away. But our students need to learn how to process new things, how to understand it's all a gray area. And so the best example, and it's a very watered down example, but if I need to hang a picture on a wall, I could have a hammer and a nail, or I could get the nail gun. Now, the nail gun's not always needed, right? But it maybe it's hurting the environment, wasting a little more energy. Maybe it will damage other things. But AI is very similar in that sense. You don't just because you can prompt something doesn't mean you need to. And I think setting that mindset for our students, understanding they're in control of any decision they make outside of technology in the classroom, what car they buy, what food they choose to eat, it's all going to have positive and negative effects. These are conversations we don't have enough at all levels. And so for me, that is kind of how AI is being introduced to our students. I start there. And when they're ready, they have that professional maturity, then sure, I'll show you how to use this tool. I'll show you that nail gun and I'll show you how not to, shoot yourself in the foot, so to speak. And that's really important for our students because they don't take time to pause. All of our students are so excited to get to what's next, they're forgetting to live in the moment. And one fact before we pass it off, I did a survey at the start of my course, and 80% or more of the students get their information on AI on TikTok and Reddit.
Hmm.
Now, maybe that's for us as a whole in a country, right? But that's something to kind of it makes you take a step back and go, what do we need to be teaching in the classroom, and where do we start? We start by building that gray area out and understanding that ethos, that personal ethos we all may have when adopting something new. And I think that's the important step we need to do.
I appreciate that you brought it back to digital literacy because I think a lot of times, especially with students of this generation, we just anticipate that because they've been born into a world where technology impacts so much of their day to day, that
Mhm.
they're already digitally literate and are able to be immersed in this type of technology and be able to use it effectively. But to your point, Matt, that's not always the case. And being able to build on the sources of information and also building into how to use these types of tools is so important. And so I think it looks a lot different, right, than what we're always talking about, that it's just let's just dive in and figure out how to use it. But sometimes it takes a little bit more groundwork than that.
Without cynicism, without
Yeah,
blame or fear. I can't use this because I'm going to be, bullied.
it's cheating,
It's
right? Yeah,
cheating.
yeah.
Or
Yeah.
we need to kind of strip everything from that and go like Cynthia, you said, it's a tool.
Hmm.
Let's start there, but let's start first on the why behind it and
Hmm.
all that good stuff.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Kim, I'm anxious to hear your thoughts coming from a K-12 workforce development environment. What does it look like to teach and build on these AI skills for students in North Carolina?
Well, interestingly enough, when I was working at the Department of Public Instruction, I was creating an AI pathway for the state. But then I left to come to Winston-Salem, and we do have an AI course that is embedded in all of our pathways across the state. However, some of our first steps, even this year, still working on it, are what are your guidelines? Right. So we had to create guidelines. What's acceptable? Our IT department was shutting off all AI. No one has access to it because we're not sure what to do with it and what is allowable and what isn't. So even understanding it from this perspective first had to happen, and we didn't pass policies, we did guidelines because then guidelines can be adjusted, and more flexible than a policy. So we just put that in place for our district this year, and a lot of them across the state, a lot of districts were trying to do that in North Carolina and trying to get the first district that does it, then everybody else says, oh, that makes sense. It's taking that step first is what do we do and what's going to work and what isn't. But I think the AI literacy, just the basics of what it is, but from a CTE workforce, there's so many careers that it's not going to take the place of. We have so many trades that are in demand, right? They're not going to go change that. AI is not going to, you know, correct that plumbing. AI is not going to, fix your HVAC or those different things that people are a little bit paranoid about. Oh, AI is coming and it's going to take over and all the things. So I think it's that understanding of what it is from the basics with students is you can't just rely on what it's feeding you. Is this valid data? So they understand just because you put something in there, and you've got to use some of those skills of evaluation and analysis. So actually, to Matt and Cynthia's point, this is the tool. I think it's our role now, especially in K-12, is how do we use that tool, and what are the benefits, and what are the some of the negatives
Yeah.
in that tool, with any tool, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's where we are, is just trying to um, set parameters around where we go next steps in a K-12 environment.
I appreciate that you were so transparent, Kim, because I think it's important to understand that it's a new tool for all of us, right?
Yeah.
We often act like we're the authorities on the subject, right? We are the adults in the room, so we should know what to do, but it's new for everyone. And going back, several decades ago, I'm sure everyone felt this way about how do we use the internet in the classroom, right? And so it's having those types of conversations, setting baseline. I like the term guidelines instead of policies because it allows us to adjust as we go through and as the tool changes and as things change. And part of that, I think, is a feedback loop, right, of what industry is doing. And then that can transition to how we use it in the classroom, how we teach it. And so part of what I wanted to talk about next is that feedback loop between, and I wanted to bring it kind of full circle, K-12, higher ed, and industry. So how are we communicating with all of those people kind of in the same room together to really get students career ready? So Kim, will come to you from a K-12 environment. What does that feedback loop look like communicating from, you talked about middle school all the way to getting these students into higher ed and into careers?
Well, I think it starts with the curriculum we're delivering. Is the curriculum aligned with what skills are needed in our workforce? We part of our evaluation every year is our local labor market data, right? What is in demand here? So are we aligning our curriculum, our credentials, to what is needed in our area? So that's really a part of it. But we also use a lot of our partners, be it post-secondary, our secondary, post-secondary, and our business partners in our advisory capacity, so that we are making sure that as they're matriculating through, that it is aligned, so that it isn't a disconnect when they leave high school and they're like, well, what in the world? This wasn't what I learned, or okay, this credential is valuable and here's where I can use it. So I think that's a really imperative for us. And we start exposing our students in eighth grade and 10th grade to what we call the world of work, where they come in and they see the high school teacher, they see post-secondary school and a table right next to them, and then they see a business, so that the student, if they're interested, they see that continuum. Oh, here's what I need to do, eat, so that, but we do the work on the back end to make sure that when they're coming and talking to all of those entities one after the other, that it does make sense and it does align to what we're needing. Does that make sense?
No, that totally makes
Yeah,
sense. It's
yeah,
establishing that
yeah,
pathway, right?
yeah,
Because I think if
right.
I'm in eighth grade, it's easy to get overwhelmed by wanting to get the job, to your point from earlier, Matt, at Pixar. Like, it
Yeah.
seems so far away. And what do I need to do today to be able to build to that point in the future? So I love that it's outlined so clearly. I think that that's fabulous. Cindy, coming from higher ed, what are your thoughts about the feedback loop going down into K-12 and then also into industry as well? What does that look like in Utah?
Okay, well, I, I think in the past, students saw high school and graduation, and then they chose a path, and then they saw college as a path and it ended, and then they saw their career as a path and it ended. And that's just not realistic. And higher ed has different ways or measurements of success. And one of the things that they have heralded is their ability to recruit high school students. And I think that's backwards. I don't think it's how we pull them into us. We need to be going to them in the high schools. So what I see is this partnership, and we've got a good start on it with concurrent enrollment, but it should be about bringing higher education into the high school environment, utilizing industry in that environment. So students see this lifelong learning goal that they t get education constantly through these various means, but it's their path. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read a quote that impacted me the other day reading it. It was by the Utah Commissioner of Higher Ed, Jeff Landward, and he says, if students can earn meaningful college credit, complete a certificate, or make significant progress towards a degree before they graduate from high school, that barrier of starting college largely disappears. That's what our goal in education is, to remove barriers. And we can remove it, make it meaningful by collaborating with industry to get those skills, provide them to the students early so they've already got college credits. It's just one more extension onto their future of lifelong learning.
I love that, an extension instead of a step up, right? Because it
Mhm.
feels like a bigger transition instead of the continuum that we want it to
Just a
be.
continuum.
Love that. That's great, Cindy. Matt, any additional thoughts from you on this feedback loop between K-12 higher ed and industry?
Yeah, I think the lifelong learning is really interesting when you put it in perspective. And, I show my students a graph of, right now I have seniors right now, and I show them this chart that says you are here. You've been in school for this amount of your life, which seems like forever. It seems like, this is, then the good stuff. And then I show them how long they're going to work, which is double what they're going to be in school. And just to connect that thread to go, listen, you are constantly growing. This is again a through line between these different institutions. And the congruent learning is important. We have students who are taking dual enrollment here in Florida who are coming in, but they have to understand. And I go back to what I said in the first question: it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think if they understand that, that's important. And then what we can do as educators is what we're doing here. This is why I always sign up for stuff like this or the ambassador programs, or I want to know what's happening in K 12 because I don't want to be, again, that higher educator who's like, this is what we do and we've done this forever, right? If we're not evolving, if we're not evolving how we communicate and how we interact with one another, the learning won't evolve, the kids won't evolve into stronger professionals. So that has to happen too. So getting yourself in front of other educators who in your mind may think are doing completely different things and then starting to recognize the overlaps. I know, Kim, you and I had that great introductory meeting a couple weeks back and we were like geeking out. We are like, oh, mine too, mine too. That alone paints a picture that validates what we're doing or not doing in the classroom, and it gives us those big next steps. So I think that would be my advice to everyone listening is, take that leap, go and find, and there's tons of creative communities, educator communities out there, local, regional, national conferences that you can go to. Definitely take advantage of those when you can, and just absorb, be a sponge, and that will help the students in the long term.
I love that. And I'm going to bring up one thing that's another through line that all three of our panelists here are very familiar with is this concept of digital credentials or certifications being that kind of through line to get students from I don't want to say step because we just decided it's a continuum from one stage, we'll say stage to the next. So I wanted to talk, Matt, first with you about how do you think these digital credentials or certifications that you use in the classroom help close that gap between education and the workforce?
I love certifications in general because they're so sneaking in the vegetables beyond what the students expect, right? They're expecting, well, I must know the tool or know the test or the objective. And it's so much more than that. It's not about perfect scores. It's not about, as, most Certiport exams, for instance, have that like, minimum qualified candidate benchmark. Those are really important, but it's about how we can take what we've learned collectively and complete it in a timed arena, for lack of a better way to say it. And for me, when I see a certification, even if it's like expired or if like I see it in a college resume, I go, they're going above and beyond to try to benefit their learning. That just shows those soft skills, shows that initiative. And B, looking at these things, I know that they are willing to take the chance of doing something under pressure, doing something that's scary. I mean, I've been using, for instance, Adobe tools for decades, and when I took the exams, I was like, oh my gosh, like what if I fail? But it's okay if you fail. That's the thing, and these give them that baseline. And again, less about the questions, more about the experience and the going outside their comfort zone, which that's what makes credentialing so important to me.
Oh, I
It
love
shows that
that.
initiative. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just about the stamp of the skills. It's what that kind of demonstrates all the work
Mhm.
that goes into that. Cindy, any additional thoughts from you on the power of certifications to help close this education to workforce gap?
Okay, one of the things we use it for, or I use it for, is to help the students listen. And by that I mean I give the exam at the beginning of the semester. So many of my students were coming in, say for example, to a software application class and saying, I know Word. I use my phone to text. And so we actually provide the students two opportunities to take the MOS certification exams free with their class. And they take it at the beginning of the semester and they listen to the results. They sometimes go, whoa, wow, I have to know all this. And secondly, if they know it, we excuse them from that portion of the curriculum. So we're not wasting their time. They can move further and farther. And I love the certification exams because they are making my job easier. And by that, I mean, I don't have as much time to research industry needs right now that have to go into preparing my curriculum. But I know that Certiport, these certification companies, have done the research and the time to identify the required skills. And so if they have identified them and created a tool to test for that, I know that if I base my curriculum on those needs, my curriculum will be valid. And then my students will listen if they don't have the skills, or if they do, they move ahead. And at the end of the semester, they take it a second time. I can't tell you how exciting it is for these students when they pass that certification exam and they've just validated their course, their knowledge, their skills, and they're ready to go out and conquer the world.
Oh, I love that. It's that stamp that they need, right? It's a reality check maybe at the beginning to say, "Oh, I guess I didn't know. I guess I didn't know as much as I thought." But then by the end to be able to say, "Look at how much I've learned, how far I've come along the way." I'm curious, Kim, if you see similar experiences with certification in North Carolina as well.
Oh, absolutely. Some of our courses in CTE, actually, the proof of learning is the certification. So we don't have a final exam, it is the credential. In North Carolina, our state legislators fund our credentials for CTE across the state. I'm just going to brag a little bit that last year, our state, they earned just short of 383,000 credentials across the state. So that is in what they've done. DPI has actually worked with industry partners to say they actually scored the value of those credentials to say that yes, this is what we need in the workforce, and that's what the state funds for us. So it is significant. It is a focus. It is a part of our accountability measure in CTE for funding. So because we feel like it's a need. And it also is that signal that they are prepared and to go into industry because so many of, I wished I'd have known this in high school. How many adults do we say, oh, I wish they had that when I was in school? And you're like, they did. They did. I promise they did. So, yeah, so we're working in our district to get them an increase. We are a little over close to 8,000 credentials earned in our district, which is significant. But like Cynthia, we pay for the students to take it again if they fail. We give them that opportunity to earn it. We don't say one and done here. So
I like
that's
that.
outcome.
What a huge investment all of your institutions are making in helping close that gap, not just to show industry that they have these skills, but to show
Mhm.
students, right, what they've learned throughout this whole process. I think it kind of mirrors and goes a little bit both ways. And I know we're running out of time here, but I always like to close things out with, we've talked about so much, but there's general advice. I know there's always lingering thoughts about how we can really translate everything that we've talked about today into actionable steps. What can educators do to help close this skills gap? So Kim, I'll come to you. What any final advice you'd share with our listeners, our attendees about closing the skills gap? What does that look like for you?
I think it's connecting with your partners, be the secondary or business partners. And just one word is providing opportunity, the opportunity for students. Like I think Cynthia Mann and both said, it's not for every student, but giving them the opportunity. It's about the equity and the access to the opportunity. So I would just say working on building those connections and opportunities.
I like that. Thank you so much. Cindy, any additional thoughts from you? Final advice about closing the skills gap that we've been talking about today?
Yes. Our job market is changing. There's so many avenues into it now. Certification is one avenue. And we need to recognize that when our students and parents say to us that they have to focus on employment, they are just being rational. We can't have personal growth, civic engagement. Those are luxuries if we don't have economic stability. And it's all of the various routes that we have to upskill that provide us economic stability. And we as teachers upskill every day. We model that for our students. We have never stopped learning, and we need to convince them they can never stop learning. And if there's no formal way of getting a college education, certify on your own. Use your online resources. Maybe not TikTok, but learn
I'm certified
and
in TikTok.
upskill.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Cindy. I appreciate that you've both talked about equity and opportunity because I think that does play a big role in this gap that we see and doing what we can to be able to close that for as many students as possible. Matt, we'll close things out with you, and then Kenneth, I'm going to pass the mic over to you as soon as we wrap up.
Yes, everything times two, amazing, advice. I think for me, again, going back to teaching our students that mindset approach, idea, it has to be growth mindset. We can't be cynical. Everything's in flux always, and you can only control what you can control. But you can control and work on your self-awareness. You can control and work on how you are processing and how strategic you are. You can't control if they'll hire you or not after a certain point. But giving our students that realistic pathway is so important because that will, they'll still be stressed, and that's okay. That happens. That's part of life when you're looking for, jobs. But that will give them a little more reinforcement that they are doing everything they're supposed to be doing in the mix. And to be honest, if they start being strategic and they start, looking at all the different pathways that they have in front of them, they will be successful, and they'll start finding, that dream will happen, but these other stops on the way are just as valuable as that the end of that journey, and getting them that early on, and that will help them kind of forge forward throughout each step of their career or each stage, as we were saying.
Love it. Lifelong learning, you guys. I love that that's been another through thread that we've had here. So thank you so much to all of our incredible panelists. Kenneth, I'm going to go ahead and give you some time to share your screen and we'll do a little bit of desk information now.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Hannah. I really appreciate it. And thank you, panelists. First off, that was fantastic. Lots of great information in there. And thank you for the opportunity to sponsor this webinar. This is brought to you by the Autodesk Certification Program. I'm just going to do a quick overview of what it is, and we'll wrap up and let you guys have some time back. Are you going to leave time for question and answers at the end, or
Yeah, I've
should I?
been watching the chat, so if we have any questions, we'll see if anyone has any in the next couple minutes, but I have a couple of announcements to round us out. So after you're finished, Kenneth, I'll finish up for us.
Lovely. So I'll just hand it back to you. So, but let's talk about Autodesk a little bit. Autodesk focuses on design and make anything. They are a fantastic organization to work with, and they have a very robust work ready certification program that goes all the way from entry level to user to associate to professional to expert certifications. They do have a program that can really help you along the entire trajectory of your career. Which is exciting. Not all of these programs have that. They do align with CTE courses for college and career readiness. They are recognized by industry. The beginning entry level is the AutoCAD certification. That is kind of the entry point into, or not the AutoCAD, I'm sorry, the Autodesk Tinkercad certification. That is the entry point into the entire program, very fundamental level. And then it bumps into the Autodesk Certified User program where you can certify in Fusion, Inventor, AutoCAD, Revit, Maya, or 3ds Max. These focus on architecture and construction and engineering. That's primarily the Autodesk and Revit programs. Product design and manufacturing, that's where Inventor and Fusion really come in. And then media and entertainment, and that's where the 3ds Max and Maya certifications come in. All of these are applicable and recommended for post-secondary credits through the ACE credit recommendation program. You can see the various amount of credit hours that they are recommended for. So that is a real opportunity to help get a head start when you do get to college. But not only are they career ready, they're college ready, right? So anyway, that was just a real quick down and dirty overview. Thank you for the opportunity to come in and present that, and I'll hand it back over to you, Anna.
Awesome. Can I make a quick request that you drop the link for everyone to see for Autodesk information into the chat when you get a
Absolutely.
second? Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. And thank you again to our panelists for that wonderful conversation. I completely want to echo what Kenneth was saying, that this has been a great discussion. We've learned so much, and I appreciate everyone lending the expertise to us today. Before we close, I just wanted to call out a few quick things, and I dropped some links into the chat for everyone to be able to get more information at your leisure. So, first is that this Certified Academy program builds up to our annual Certified Educators Conference that's going to be happening in Nashville, Tennessee in June. We have two of our panelists, and I'm hoping that Kim will be there as well. But we have many educators who are going to be joining us for an opportunity to enhance an experience like this, learn from each other, connect, and collaborate. So if you're looking to continue this conversation in maybe an in-person setting, I would encourage you to register for that conference taking place June 15th through the 17th. So I've dropped a link to the registration page into the chat, and we'll have the follow-up email that will be going out, and we'll include the link to the certified registration there as well. Second announcement is that we'll be meeting again next month to discuss skills that your students need in their career. So again, keeping our thread going around this topic, but we'll be learning from some business leaders, talking about what the hiring process like, what they're looking for. So getting that feedback loop going from both sides. We hope everyone who's been able to join us here will continue and join us next month. So I believe it's going to be May 19th. We're cognizant of the fact that we're getting close to the end of the school year. And we also know that we have the Memorial Day holiday, so we're pushing it a little bit earlier in May. So we hope that everyone's able to join us. We're so grateful that you spent some time with us again this morning, and we'll send out the recording here in the next couple of days for those who aren't able to join us for the full session. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, panelists, and we hope to see you all again with us in May. Have a great one, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.